Hello, my name is Stephanie McGee-Kludinsky. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the Office of Disability Services here at New England College. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about kind of what is a disability according to federal definitions. I'm going to share some information with you about the kind of supporting documentation that I need to provide disability services through my office. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the difference in disability services between high school and college, because there are some differences. And then I'll also just kind of share with you more specifically what kinds of accommodations, or what are accommodations, what I do through my office. So my contact information will be displayed on the screen for you at a couple of different times, and if you have any questions or concerns, you are always welcome to reach out to me via email or give me a phone call. My phone number will be displayed as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing it's really important to understand when we talk about disability services is what that definition is of disability is according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it's a little broader than many people realize. So a disability is defined as a physical or mental health condition or impairment that significantly impacts a major life activity. Those can include concentration, sleeping, eating, walking, bodily functions. Anybody with a condition that significantly negatively impacts their ability to do those things, including learning, may qualify for what we call reasonable accommodations. And that can include things like mental health conditions. Many students with anxiety disorders or depression may not know that they may qualify for disability services. So I always like to mention that. So when we talk about documentation for disability services, it's important to understand what we're talking about. So what I look for information from a qualified provider that basically tells me more about your condition, what your condition is, how it impacts you on a day-to-day basis. For some conditions, I may need to know a little bit more information about how it was determined that you have that condition. That documentation can take the form of copies of psychoeducational or psychosocial testing reports. It can be a letter from your qualified healthcare or mental health care provider that confirms the diagnosis and provides either a summary or a copy of testing if applicable. It discusses in detail the impact and barriers of your condition, in other words, what those functional limitations are. And then if your provider chooses to provide recommendations for accommodations, it also includes a rationale as to why, in their professional opinion, this is something that you may need. I like to also mention that prior IEPs and 504 plans are accepted as supporting documentation, as supplemental supporting documentation, but oftentimes those IEP or 504 plans, while they tell me about what was helpful for you in high school, oftentimes they don't include the underlying information as to why it is that you need that information. So you're welcome to submit those, but just know that that might not have the information that I need for my office to figure out what accommodations you may need. The next thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the difference between high school and college for disabled students or students with disabilities. So some things to keep in mind. Disability services or accommodations at the college level are governed by different laws. So in high school, IDEA is applicable for disabled students or students with disabilities, but in higher ed, IDEA doesn't apply. So we follow the spirit and the letter of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. We follow the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act Amendments Act, and then also FHA requirements. That's the Fair Housing Act. So we follow those stipulations in there. The focus in high school is oftentimes about ensuring student success, and in college it's a little different. So we're more interested in focusing on ensuring that students have equal and equitable access through my office. There are a lot of great programs here at New England College that focus on student success, and you have heard and will hear more about those throughout your modules, but my office focuses on ensuring access for disabled students or students with disabilities. In Higher ed documentation needs to be specific to a student's condition and daily living activities, which may be a little different than in high school. High school documentation typically focuses, or documentation in high school typically focuses on what you need for academic success. And in higher education, I want more information than that. I need to know, like, do you need campus life accommodations? Do you need dining accommodations? That kind of information. In college, unlike in high school, students have to request accommodations and self-identify. What that means is that I don't go looking for you. You are supposed to come to me. That's kind of an expectation for adults in our society, is that they identify what it is that they need. And so while I work with students and I try to kind of catch students if I hear that this or that student may have a disability that requires accommodations, students have to self-identify. Finally, parents no longer have access to student records through my office without the student providing express written permission using my Office of Disability Services Release of Information form, and the school cannot make decisions on the basis of parent interactions. So the way that I like to talk about this is, while you are welcome to have parents or family members or mentors supporting you in our conversations or assisting you with the process, you're the one driving the bus. So you are the one that I primarily need to work with. Like I said, I welcome you to include your support people in the conversations or in this process if you need to, but again, they cannot make decisions on your behalf. I cannot work primarily with them. I have to work with you. Then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is just kind of an overview of what disability services is here at New England College and in higher education. So my office works to ensure that we're providing reasonable accommodations in academic and campus life settings. Those reasonable accommodations are intended to ensure that you have equal and equitable access to the opportunities, programs, and services at the college you choose to attend. And reasonable accommodations are those that don't constitute what we call a fundamental alteration to the nature of the program. So what that means is that, like, let's say you're taking a composition class and you have a language-based learning disability such as dyslexia. You still have to write papers. We put in place accommodations for you to ensure that you have equal access to the opportunities to learn and demonstrate learning, but it would not be a reasonable accommodation to say you don't have to write papers because it's a composition class, and writing those papers, demonstrating writing skills is a core component of that class. And as I talked about kind of with the last slide, in higher education, students are required to self-identify with my office and then also share their accommodations needs with their faculty members. I support students through that process, or as much or as little as they want me to, but again, a lot of that onus for self-identification is on the student themselves. And then again, kind of back to, and just to reiterate those prior points, that again, the school cannot make decisions on the basis of parent interaction. And then, like I said, if you have any questions or concerns, you are always welcome to contact me either by emailing me at disabilityservices, disabilityservices at nec.edu, or at my personal New England College email account, smcghee, that's smcghee at nec.edu. You can also find contact information in my scheduling link. If you go to nec.edu, that's our website, do a search for disability services, and then under the accommodations process, there is a link to my scheduling page if you'd like to schedule a meeting with me.